Hello and welcome. I'm James Ezimoha and you're watching Daybreak on A News. Let's see your headlines. Rescuers race to find survivors after Colombia's devastating earthquake, with more than 2,700 people reportedly missing. Romania destroys 2 Russian-made drones found near its strategic Neptune deep gas pipeline in the Black Sea. And North Korea fires another ballistic missile days before major US-South Korea military drills begin. Welcome to Daybreak. Now, Colombia is facing one of the deadliest earthquakes in its recent history. Rescue teams are still searching for survivors as emergency operations continue across the country's western region.
At least 250 people have been killed and more than 1,600 people injured after a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit western Colombia on Monday morning. Rescue operations continue to try and find people trapped under the rubble. The worst damage has been reported in Cali and Pereira. Crews are breaking up large concrete slabs and forming human chains to remove debris from the site. The area is repeatedly brought to complete silence so rescuers can listen for signs of life. They say faint sounds can still be heard even after 30 hours after the quake struck. Homes, schools and health centers have been destroyed or badly damaged. Many communities in the Choco region are still without electricity and other basic services. The earthquake struck just a few days after President Abelardo de la Espriella took office. He has visited the affected areas and promised support for families who lost their homes. Work is underway to restore electricity in Cali. Some rural areas are still without power, and several traffic lights remain out of service. A nighttime curfew has been imposed in the city. Officials say troops will remain in the worst-hit areas to help maintain order. Authorities say it may take several days to determine the full extent of the damage and the final death toll.
Now, tensions around Iran's maritime blockade are escalating, with Washington reporting a fresh strike on a commercial vessel. Meanwhile, Tehran says the key regional waterway will stay closed until its demands are met.
US forces have fired missiles at a commercial cargo ship they say repeatedly ignored warnings to stop violating the naval blockade on Iranian ports. The Panama-flagged Vela Nova was struck by 2 Hellfire missiles fired from a US Navy helicopter, according to US Central Command. The missiles disabled the ship's steering gear. The vessel was believed to have been hit about 71 nautical miles off Pakistan's coast, according to UK maritime risk management group Vanguard. CENTCOM says it has now redirected 55 commercial vessels attempting to run the blockade, disabled 3 non-compliant ships and boarded 2 others. If confirmed, the Vela Nova would be the 12th vessel attacked by US forces since the blockade was announced in April, and the 3rd since it was reimposed on the 14th of July. Iranian security official Mohsen Rezai said the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed unless Washington changes its behavior and accepts Iran's conditions. Those include ending what Tehran calls the US war against Iran and unfreezing Iranian assets. Iran's foreign ministry has also said reopening the strait depends on lifting the US naval blockade. It says talks with Oman are focused on shipping routes but are separate from the question of reopening the strait. And Tehran says it is not holding direct negotiations with Washington, with diplomacy limited to messages passed through intermediaries.
Now, over in Georgia, a locally registered crypto platform has been blacklisted by the US over claims it funneled millions of dollars to Iran's Revolutionary Guards. However, Tbilisi disputes the case. Here's more.
The U.S. Treasury has blacklisted a Georgia-registered crypto platform, accusing it of funneling millions of dollars to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The sanctions target SHPS Shellbit, a Georgia-based firm, and its affiliated cryptocurrency platform. Washington says the two formed part of an international money laundering network benefiting Iran and the IRGC. According to Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, roughly $3 million in IRGC-linked transactions passed through the platform, with more than $2 million sent onward to Nobitex, an already sanctioned Iranian exchange. OFAC says the network is run by two Iranian nationals based outside Iran who together have laundered tens of millions of dollars. It's the latest in a string of sanctions cases tied to Georgia since July. At least 3 companies now under scrutiny. Georgia's national bank pushed back, saying SHPS Shalbit is a private company that never registered as a virtual asset service provider. Foreign Minister Maryam Zia acknowledged the difficulty of defending Georgia's interests without a seat at the table, a gap that itself opened after Tbilisi suspended EU accession talks last year. She said the government is working with the European Commission to protect Georgia's standing in the months ahead. Nini Nikoleishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Now, countries in the Baltics have tightened security around critical energy infrastructure amid reports that Russia may be considering attacks using captured Ukrainian drones. This has put NATO's eastern flank on heightened alert.
Security protection has been strengthened at Lithuania's critical infrastructure. The country's military intelligence reportedly obtained information that Russia was considering attacks in the Baltic region using captured Ukrainian drones. Since the 18th of June, Lithuania's military personnel have been helping protect the country's LNG terminal, power facilities, and an electricity link with Poland. Defence Minister Robertas Kaunas says he's extended the support of 30 personnel through to the 19th of August. Over in Latvia, extra security has been put in place around vital infrastructure, including a dam on the Daugava River near Riga and the Inčukalns underground natural gas storage facility. That's according to Prime Minister Andris Kulbergs in an interview with Reuters. In Poland, energy company Orlen is examining alternative gas import routes in case its usual supplies or infrastructure are threatened. Currently, it imports about 80% of Poland's gas through the Świnoujście LNG terminal and an undersea pipeline carrying Norwegian gas. Gaz System, which operates the infrastructure, is working under heightened alert conditions, according to a source familiar with the matter. Poland has also increased security around an electricity connection with Ukraine, which helps stabilize the country's war-damaged power grid. The moves reflect growing concern across NATO's eastern flank over potential attacks or sabotage targeting critical infrastructure.
Now, Ukraine says Russia is preparing to deploy more North Korean troops and has received additional ballistic missiles from Pyongyang. Kyiv warns the battlefield experience poses a growing threat far beyond Europe.
They are now preparing to deploy an additional North Korean contingent on its territory. They have also received additional ballistic missiles from North Korea. Everyone around the world must understand what this means. This is not only about the lives of people in Ukraine and not only about the threats we face. North Korea's ballistic missiles and other weapons are being improved through its collaboration with Russia. The more North Korean strikes there are here in Ukraine, in Europe, the more their missiles and soldiers are used, the more they correct their shortcomings and blind spots, the greater the danger will later be for Japan, the Republic of Korea, the Philippines, and other countries in the region. That is why, when we speak about the need for joint action, for coordination and mutual support, when we speak about the need to help us strengthen our air defense, we are also in fact speaking about taking away North Korea's appetite and any interest in coming here, to our land and into our skies, with its weapons in order to learn how to wage war. Everyone across the globe who respects human life must stand together in taking action to protect people.
Now let's bring in Andrei Ordinovich, retired colonel from the Armed Forces of Ukraine, join us from Kyiv. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Russia has now used North Korean ballistic missiles in attacks on Ukraine. What does that tell us about how the Russia-North Korea military partnership is evolving?
It is very difficult not to agree with the president of Ukraine or other Western expert who is underlying this new threat as a strategic one and very, very much significant. Because this significance coming that Russia will have additional bench of missiles, is not going to have only the troops on the ground. They would have possibility to extend their missile threats toward Ukraine, but not only toward Ukraine. It is a geopolitical threat to the Indo-Pacific region as well as Europe region, because as President Ukraine mentioned that the North Korean troops not only are sitting and taking the barbecue in Russia, but they are actively participating on the Russian side to wage war of aggression against Ukraine. It could be international community should recalculate and this kind of threat not only to Ukraine. It's giving also a possibility, some advantage to Russia because they could rebalance their missile units to another location, to another mission and task. Having on the threat to Ukraine in very close vicinity of Ukrainian border, Voronezh region are giving some advantage because giving a short time flight, it's giving a short time for alerting Ukrainian population and military, and right now we are under alert threat, possibly or jet UAV or missiles from the close to Ukrainian border. It also potentially helping Russia to remove their troops to another location or to another mission like counter missile function. Also, I would like to mention that Ukraine is not longer a fighting war of aggression against Russia and military industrial base. It is fighting increasingly the combination of combined efforts, war efforts from North Korea and Russia. It required for Ukraine to update early warning system because it is additional assets and additional launchers, additional missiles. It also demanding to evaluate their logistic, their location in order to recalculate our counter launcher and counter capabilities.
Now, Ukraine says the new unit could have up to 120 missiles. How significant is that for Ukraine's already limited ability to intercept ballistic attacks?
It could have a significant impact, as I mentioned, because we are lack of anti-ballistic interceptors. During the last 4.5 and more years of the war, the ballistic Patriot system was identified as most effective, despite the fact we receive numbers from Western partners, but the Ukrainian territory is very, very big, and it is not enough. And if you will take into consideration the July months of Russian missile attack, out of 358 or 57 missiles, they use 126 ballistic missiles. Out of 126 ballistic missiles, due to the lack of the Patriot interceptors, which are very much expensive, Ukrainian air defense units have been able to intercept only 10. It means the threat to Ukrainian critical infrastructure, energy, water supply, and different one is increasing, and additional 120 missiles with very low accuracy could be even more dangerous threat to Ukrainian civil population. And last example, if I'm not mistaken, based on investigation of debris, they Russian forces used North Korean missiles hitting by Zaporizhia steel plant, two of them, and it was out of outcomes of this attack, 7 civilian workers have been killed. It's been due to the including very low accuracy of this. But again, their range is quite impressive. Could reinforce the Iskander capabilities. Again, it is very serious threat to Ukraine. It is very serious threat to globally, specifically for the entire international community.
All right, sir, let me ask you this. What is North Korea now gaining from putting its weapons, troops, and military technology into Russia's war?
Look at North Koreans are improving their capabilities. What does mean capabilities? First and foremost, they are testing their missiles, they are testing their launchers, because they did not have any possibility except some launchers toward China Sea in order to test and show up. Even in your program today, it was indication that they launch another ballistic missile toward the U.S. South Korean exercise. It's like showing their type of the deterrence. They are improving precision, accuracy 100%. If you will take into consideration to use the North Korean ballistic missile in 2023, 2024, the accuracy was very bad. But right now, it is improved up to the 100 meters. It is not still a precise like Western system, but again, could create a headache for the civilian population and threat for them. Second, they are doing the tactic, techniques, and procedure based on current warfare. They are adjusting and training units which are very important and very high risk to our South Korean friends, because they not far away from the military demilitarized zone and could use it at any time. And thirdly, they are transferring technology. I mean, Russia giving them improving technology in not only in missile sphere, they also improving their submarines fleet. They're improving the tactics and procedure of land forces. It is another threat what President of Ukraine mentioned, that 30 or 50,000 North Korean troops should be deployed to Russian territory with some kind of mission. It's been they benefited very much with this war of aggression against Russia, improving their strength and capability, which could be a very high indication for international community based on existing the Security Council United Nations resolution towards North Korea.
Now, the United States and South Korea are watching this closely. Could Russia's military partnership with North Korea create a security problem far beyond Ukraine?
No doubt, no doubt. It is already a security threat to Indo-Pacific due to what I mentioned before regarding the gaining better capabilities and combat readiness for the North Korean troops. It could be high risk, high threat to the South Korea troops and political military leadership, including US policy in Indo-Pacific. And for this reason, Ukrainians, as always, are asking US international community to help us to get more interceptors, which are more effective against the ballistic, to create ballistic shield. It could help to undermine the geopolitical status if we would have enough and would be effective. We're also requesting the South Korean colleague to supply with their air defense system, which are very much effective, proven during the war against Iranian milling activities in the Middle East. again, we have to recalculate all this threat and be more conscious on the further development of the alliance between Russia and North Korea with backup of China and Iran.
All right. Now, at what point, sir, does this Russia and North Korea alliance become a threat that Europe and Asia can no longer treat separately?
What we have right now geopolitically and globally, it is an element linking to each other. Personally, I see the connection between the Ukrainian war of aggression of Russia in order to destabilize the Euro-Atlantic area, destabilize and dismantle of NATO and European Union. It is also connected to the involvement of North Korean troops on Ukrainian soil in order to provide additional threat to Indo-Pacific, specifically to our partners and colleagues like Japan, New Zealand, Australia, as well as Taiwan. And it is also have effect because international sanction do have a lot of holes and helping to develop their technology. For example, in North Korean missiles, based on our investigation, we found numbers of, I would say, dozens of spare parts, chips, and other kind of stuff, elements of a Western country, including US, including Japan, including Taiwan. It's mean international sanction was applied towards this country, and not only this to Russia, are very, very weak or not effective. And they are helping them to develop. Russia, for example, increased numbers of production of missiles for Iskander, for cruise missiles, more than 100%. It means we are targeting defense industrial bases in order to undermine war of efforts. At the same time, they're still able, for different reasons, including the probably number of holes in the international sanction, and develop still keeping their capabilities on the appropriate level and wage a war not only against Ukraine, but undermine international order, which was set after the World War II and based on the rules order. They're undermining, and international community are very fragile for some reason on a more solidified response.
All right, thank you. That was Andrei Ordinovich, retired colonel from the Armed Forces of Ukraine, joining us from Kyiv. Good to have you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Romanian army divers have destroyed 2 drones found drifting near the Neptune deep gas project in the Black Sea. Romanian officials say Ukraine confirmed the drones did not belong to its forces. A civilian ship spotted the drones on Tuesday, leading to a controlled blast to protect nearby shipping and gas work. Their origin remains unclear. Neptune Deep is due to start production in 2027 and could make Romania the EU's largest gas producer. Now, North Korea says it's launched a ballistic missile towards the sea from its east coast. The missile was fired from the Wonsan area on Wednesday and traveled about 700 kilometers, according to South Korean and Japanese authorities. Analysts say it may have been a hypersonic weapon, although officials are still examining its specifications. It's just days before major joint military exercises between South Korea and the United States. Seoul and Tokyo condemned launch, while Washington said it posed no immediate threat. All right, after the break, we'll discuss the rest of the global stories. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still on to Daybreak. Now, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is due to make an official visit to Libya. The talks in Tripoli and Benghazi will focus on Turkey-Libya relations, the political situation in Libya, and cooperation in the energy and defense sectors. Fidan is expected to reaffirm Ankara's support for the United Nations political process. Fidan is expected to repeat Turkey's commitment to its One Libya policy. The talks will also cover the Eastern Mediterranean, Palestine, the Gulf region, and the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is due to meet Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ankara on Wednesday. Abbas has arrived in the Turkish capital for a three-day official visit at Erdogan's invitation. According to Turkey's communications director, the two leaders are expected to discuss the latest developments in Palestine, bilateral relations, and regional issues. Now, the UK government is facing an early test of its climate commitments over two major North Sea and oil and gas projects. Decisions over Rosebank and Jackdaw could put pressure on Prime Minister Andy Burnham as he weighs energy security against his environmental pledges. Zeynab Farajzada has more.
The future of two major North Sea oil and gas projects could become an early test of Andy Burnham's climate credentials as Prime Minister. Rosebank is a proposed oil field off Shetland, while Jackdaw is a gas field east of Aberdeen. Both were approved under the previous Conservative government, but those approvals were later ruled unlawful. That means fresh decisions now have to be made. The government is facing pressure from both sides. Environmental campaigners are urging to reject new fossil fuel developments, arguing that they will increase carbon emissions without bringing down household energy bills. The oil and gas industry, meanwhile, says projects such as Jackdaw can help strengthen energy security, support jobs, and reduce reliance on imports. Jackdaw is also being presented as different from Rosebank because it is a gas project which could use existing infrastructure and contribute to UK gas supplies. Rosebank, by contrast, is predominantly an oil development and has faced particularly strong opposition from climate campaigners. The decisions come at a sensitive time for Burnham. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, he backed policies aimed at reducing emissions, while Labour's 2024 manifesto pledged not to issue new North Sea exploration license, but said it would honour existing licenses. Both projects were already in the planning system. Energy Secretary Meta van Bille has said oil and gas will remain part of the UK's energy mix during the transition. The decisions over Rosebank and Jackdaw could therefore provide an early indication of how Burnham intends to balance the demands of energy security with his government's climate goals. Zeynab Farajzada, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Now, meanwhile, the United Nations is warning of increasing violence in the West Bank and says it is at a breaking point. UN figures show 18 Palestinians have been killed in incidents linked to settler attacks this year, more than the 17 recorded in all of 2025. The inquiry found Israeli authorities were directly involved in attacks that killed, injured, and displaced Palestinians. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization recorded 37 attacks on healthcare in July, compared with a monthly average of 10 earlier this year.
One side of the violence while ignoring the...
A Syrian court has sentenced ousted leader Bashar al-Assad to death in absentia over crimes committed during the country's nearly 14-year war. Assad's cousin, Atef Najib, was also sentenced to death. He was the former head of political security in Dara in southern Syria. It's the first conviction against Assad since he was ousted in December 2024, ending his family's decades-long rule. Assad fled to Russia as rebel forces closed in on Damascus and was later granted asylum in Moscow. Now, Pakistan's central bank warns a prolonged Middle East conflict could drive up energy costs and inflation, threatening the country's fragile economic recovery. Analysts say the impact is already being felt.
Pakistan is already feeling the economic fallout from the Middle East conflict. In its report released on Monday, the State Bank of Pakistan warned that a prolonged or wider conflict could push global energy and commodity prices above current projections. The conflict, which began in February, has already driven up energy prices. Freight and insurance costs have also risen. Supply chains have been disrupted. For Pakistan, that matters quickly. Higher energy costs can push up inflation. They can also put pressure on the country's external account and the broader macroeconomic outlook. The impact was visible earlier this year. Inflation averaged 10.2% between March and June, after remaining within the 5 to 7% range earlier in the year. The SBP expects economic growth of 3.5 to 4.5% in fiscal year 27, but it warns elevated energy costs and supply disruptions could slow the recovery. For Pakistan, the risk goes beyond higher fuel prices. A deeper Middle East conflict could feed into inflation, weaken the external position, and put the country's economic recovery under renewed pressure. Maryam Zia, A News, Islamabad.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump says the constitutional limit of 2 presidential terms is very strong. The 22nd Amendment bars anyone from being elected U.S. president more than twice. It also says anyone who serves more than 2 years of another president's term can only be elected once. Trump was asked about a possible 2028 run by reporters after arriving at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland.
Everybody asked me that question, and you know that the law is very strong on that. I'd love to run, but the law is very strong. I get asked by well, even tonight, they're screaming at the event, 2028. No, everybody wants me to do it, but the law is very strong.
Now, the remnants of Typhoon Dolphin in China have brought heavy rain to Beijing and Henan province with the risk of flooding. Beijing has issued an orange rainstorm warning, its second highest level, as the capital braced to receive more than 1/3 of its average annual rainfall in 24 hours. Experts say climate change and the El Nino weather pattern are contributing to stronger typhoons in China. The Chinese government says it's expanding the use of artificial intelligence to improve the country's resilience to extreme weather. Now, a political gathering in Corsica has been overshadowed by new threats from the island's former armed separatist group, the National Liberation Front of Corsica, or FLNC. French authorities have launched a terrorism investigation following a statement rejecting greater autonomy and warning newcomers to the island.
Corsican independence supporters gathered in the town of Corte from August 7th to 9th for the 44th edition of the International Day event. Organised by Nazione, a political movement campaigning for Corsican independence, the event brought together representatives of different peoples involved in independence and freedom movements. This year, the focus was largely on plans to give Corsica greater autonomy within France. Organisers also adopted a roadmap for Nazione's future political activities. But the event was overshadowed by a statement from the Corsican National Liberation Front, or FLNC, which has a history of armed and terrorist activity. In a secret press conference on August 6, the group rejected the proposed autonomy plan and warned French people who have moved to Corsica to stay at home. FLNC accused the French state, as well as nationalist politicians supporting autonomy, of betraying Corsica's interests. The group also described the arrival of around 5,000 French people on the island every year as a threat to Corsican identity and issued security threats against them. French authorities have responded by opening a preliminary investigation into suspected criminal association with a view to preparing terrorist acts.
All right, we'll be back after a short break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to A News. This is still Daybreak. Iran will host a meeting of the 5 Caspian Sea states in September. under the Tehran Convention on Protecting the Sea's Marine Environment. Touraj Shiralilou has more.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal and International Affairs has said that Tehran is going to hold the meeting of top-ranking officials of the Caspian Sea Basin states on 23rd of September. Speaking at a ceremony to commemorate the International Caspian Day that falls on 12th of August, Kazem Gharibabadi said the event would provide an opportunity for bilateral and multilateral talks and help strengthen regional cooperation. A state IRNA news agency quoted the Iranian official as saying that following the agreement of the coastal states, Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Turkmenistan, the ground is set for convention of the 7th Conference of the Parties to the Tehran Convention. Stressing that regional security should be managed by the 5 coastal states, the Deputy Foreign Minister added that recent hostilities had further increased the Caspian Sea's geopolitical and strategic importance. His statements came after an Iranian commercial vessel was hit by a Ukrainian military drone in the Russian territorial waters in the Caspian Sea in July, which killed 1 sailor aboard. Tehran had nominated to host the Caspian Summit on 12th of August 2026 to commemorate the International Caspian Day, which could not convene because of the Israeli-US war against Iran. On this day in 2006, the Framework Convention for the Protection of the Marine Environment of the Caspian Sea from Pollution came into force. The Iranian official also warned that the Caspian Sea's declining water level, pollution, and weakening ecosystem threatened coastal communities, fisheries, shipping, ports, and other vital infrastructure. Touraj Shiralilou from Tehran for A News.
Now, today marks 20 years since the Tehran Convention entered into force, creating a legally binding framework for protecting the Caspian Sea. With all 5 littoral states party to the convention, how much has it achieved and what more is needed to protect the Caspian environment? To discuss this, we're joined by Vadim Ni, co-founder of the Save the Caspian Sea movement from Toronto, Canada. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me for today's regional talks.
All right.
The International Caspian Day is not just a day to celebrate the sea or take joy in it, as many officials are trying to do. The Caspian Sea is facing an increasingly serious environmental crisis, and today is the 20th anniversary of the entry into force of the Tehran Convention on Protection of the Marine Environment of the Caspian Sea. The convention was meant to become a key international legal instrument for protecting the Caspian environment and to ensure the sustainable development of its resources.
All right, so I was going to ask you, sir, I was going to ask you this before you continue. Unlike the 2018 Convention on the legal status of the Caspian Sea, the Tehran Convention, on the other hand, has been ratified by all 5 countries bordering the Caspian. How much has that legal commitment strengthened environmental cooperation?
Actually, it's the agreement is in place, unlike the other Tehran Convention on legal status of the Caspian Sea. This one, the environmental one, is already in place. It has the protocols to be implemented by all 5 littoral states. But what is not in place, it's the mechanisms to implement the convention, because it's the permanent secretariat has never been properly established. It's still the UNEP, UN Environment Program, serving as a temporary secretariat for the convention. In other words, there is no functioning team of the dedicated staff working on its implementation. Meetings of the parties are held irregularly. Thank you for the news that Iran announced that they will hold this year the session of the Conference of the Parties in September. been for a long time for this announcement. But still, it means that 5 Caspian states is not doing enough to implement the convention, even at the level of the environmental ministries. But it should be based on the implementation on the broader perspective by engaging the lawyers, environmentalists, ministries of with different competencies, including the foreign affairs ministries. The convention website is not functioning, and very few people in our countries even know that the convention do exist. And when it comes to the most serious environmental challenge facing the Caspian Sea today, the dramatic decline in its water level, the Tehran Convention contains only a very vague reference to the fluctuation in its sea levels.
All right.
Unfortunately, many people, still referring that the sea is fluctuating.
All right, I wanted to ask you some other questions. Apologies for interrupting you. Now, the Tehran Convention created a channel for the 5 countries to work together on the Caspian's shared environment. Has that cooperation managed to stay separate from the region's political and legal disputes?
It should serve, there's an information platform. It's the basic level of the function of any regional environmental convention, because it's based on wide and broad access to information, environmental information. But this convention doesn't work in this regards too, because the last, I would provide one example. The last report on the status of the Caspian Sea was published in 2019. And it was based on the outdated data. For instance, that's in relation to the shrinkage of the Caspian Sea, it's still mentioning that probably the Caspian Sea will even rise. That's which is very outdated information. That is why it's not functioning or as a platform even for environmental information exchange.
Hello, sir. Are you still there? Are you still with us, sir? Apologies, we've lost our guest due to... Hello, sir.
Should I repeat?
I'll just move ahead with the next question. Permit me for that. The convention requires states to prevent, reduce, and control pollution from land, seabed activities, and vessels. Where have we seen the greatest progress, and where do the biggest gaps still remain?
The 2 protocols were adopted by 5 littoral states on land-based resources and on offshore operations. So the both main categories of sources of pollutions are covered by the protocols. What is not in place is implementation of the protocols and relevant provisions of the convention. That's the first. What should be in place is monitoring of the sources of pollution. For instance, in Kazakhstan, we are still discussing that should be automated monitoring of environmental pollution by all companies, because the sea is big. It's not possible for any source, for every source of pollution of the sea to have an inspector, because it's the pollutions from vessels, pollutions from offshore operations by all companies, and it's a huge territory. That's why that should be first, what should be in place is the monitoring, providing us the information on the sources of pollutions and the level of pollutions, and then to take actions against the companies, ships which are polluting the Caspian Sea.
All right, thank you. That was Vadim Ni, co-founder of the Save the Caspian Sea movement and director of the Socio-Ecological Fund, join us from Toronto, Canada. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, now Hungary is moving to reshape its political institutions in a major break with the Viktor Orban era. A new president is now taking on a key constitutional role with a pledge to restore checks and balances. Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where Hungary has elected a new president in a symbolic break from the Viktor Orban era. Parliament chose former Supreme Court President András Baka as the country's new head of state, with the backing of Prime Minister Peter Magyar's governing TISA party. The opposition Fidesz party boycotted the vote, but Baka was elected in a secret ballot by a margin of 140 votes to 6. The presidency in Hungary is largely ceremonial. However, the office can send legislation back to Parliament or refer laws to the Constitutional Court for review, giving it an important role in Hungary's constitutional system. Baka's appointment also carries personal significance. He was removed from office after publicly criticizing Orban's judicial reforms, and the European Court of Human Rights later ruled that his dismissal violated his rights. He replaces Tomáš Solyok, an Orban ally, whose term was cut short after Hungary's new government approved constitutional changes aimed at reshaping institutions built during Orban's 16 years in power. In his inaugural address, Baka said Hungary must restore checks and balances while avoiding political revenge. He said the country cannot, quote, build a common future while its citizens see each other as enemies, and that political change should not mean that from now on, people will have to be afraid, be silent, or feel like outsiders in their own country. Baka pledged to serve all Hungarians regardless of political affiliation. He's expected to be sworn in August 19th and will serve until Hungary adopts a new constitution or for a maximum of 5 years. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Now for some good news for Azerbaijani football fans. Sabah Football Club overturned a first leg deficit with a commanding 4-0 win over Aarhus, sealing a 5-2 aggregate victory and booking their place in the Champions League playoffs.
All right, just take a look at this atmosphere for a second. Sabah are here thanking their fans as the final score has just ended in 4-0, a convincing victory for Sabah. Not only have they overturned that deficit, they've guaranteed themselves Europa League football and got themselves one step closer to Champions League football. Now, Sabah showed real belief in their ability to break down the Danish defence. There wasn't any goals in the first half, but 4 came in the second half. Now, I'm going to need my notes for this. So, Simic on 59 minutes levelled the tie. Remember that deficit, that 1-goal deficit that they had to make up. Solvet on 67 minutes, Michaels on 78 minutes, and Severina on 89 minutes for a final score of 5-2. A convincing victory there for Sabah, and I think this is real encouragement heading into that Champions League playoff. Now, we don't know their opponents just yet. It's going to be either Red Star Belgrade or Beersheva, but one more round to go and we could see Champions League football coming back to Azerbaijan.
That was brilliant from Sabah and brilliant from Katie Wilson as always. All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.